Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're having a good afternoon. Pro Football Talks. Mike Florio on what's next for Browns running back Quinshon Judkins, who was arrested over the weekend on domestic battery charges.
And when you're placed on paid leave, you stay on paid leave until the case is resolved and until the subsequent NFL personal conduct policy case is resolved. So that creates a very real incentive for the player to resolve the criminal case ASAP and then pivot around and take whatever punishment the NFL proposes and get back on the field. And that's what happened with Hall. He pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct. He ended up being suspended, I think, 5 games, and he got credit for the 4 that he missed while he was on paid leave. So there is strategically a reason to get this done the moment you're put on paid leave. Because if you just let the legal system play out while you're on paid leave, you may miss the whole season. Because unless you have an incentive to try to get your case wrapped up, and being on paid leave gives you that incentive, yeah, this thing could just linger and linger and linger. So that's how it could go for Judkins. We don't know what the NFL is going to do. They'll do their own investigation. They'll make a decision on whether or not they're going to put him on paid leave. They won't necessarily even announce that they're not doing it. But if they do it, he'll be gone, and he'll be back once that case is resolved, and presumably once he works out some sort of a deal with the NFL on whatever his punishment will be under the personal conduct policy.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about Quinshon Judkins later in the show with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Daniel Fusi, the Browns beat reporter for ESPN, on the Browns' quarterback plans.
It was a fascinating spring when you have 4 quarterbacks out there who are vying to be the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. And I think it was interesting to hear what Kevin Stefanski said about the spring, where it was more of a teaching and an installation process. But he acknowledged that that's going to change once we get into the summer. We're looking to evaluate this crop of quarterbacks. And obviously, as he said before, they broke up the reps to get the rookies a lot of reps when we talk about Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel. But I think that as we get closer to the start of the season, you have to look at the vets with Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett as maybe being ahead of the crop. And I think that we're going to see that a little bit. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders has been at the center of this. We saw a trend where he didn't get a lot of first-team reps. Does that change? He impressed with his progression, with his accuracy. They love what he's doing in the building. But can he crack that group and get into the first team?
Rookies report Friday for training camp in Berea. Aaron Schatz, Football Outsider and ESPN, on if the Browns will regret on passing on Travis Hunter, who went to the Jaguars when they traded back.
If Travis Hunter is a one-way player, then they absolutely made the right trade because they got so much value for that pick, right? The odds that Travis Hunter as a one-way player is that much more valuable than Mason Graham, that he's worth all the picks they got in addition, is just near impossible. But if Hunter can do this two-way thing and is super special, then we have to have a conversation about it. But I absolutely understand why they made the trade. And Mason Graham is a pretty darn good player.
More Browns talk with Pete Smith and Fred Greetham from the Orange and Brown Report coming up. MLB All-Star Game is tonight. Stephen Kwan, the only Guardian who will be playing in the game. MLB wrapped up their draft yesterday. Paul Gillespie, Director of Scouting for the Guardians, talking about their first-round pick, outfielder Jace Lavalette from Texas A&M, and a draft class that has a whole lot more power than usual for the Guardians.
He's a massive guy, speed, power, patience profile. One of the things that really stand out about Jace is just he's a winner and he wants to win. He just has this competitive nature, this competitive streak. I think you all probably saw in the SEC tournament this year. He got hit on the hand, broke his hand, had surgery that night, played the next day. So I think that kind of illustrates the type of person and type of competitor we're dealing with. Really exciting to bring the guys into the organization that we did. To your point, some guys that have some power and some guys that can kind of run it up there in terms of exit velocities and raw power and those types of things. I don't think it was necessarily anything strategic. I think every draft's a little bit different. every year, especially, picking at 27 and then 3 picks we had in that little cluster there. You never really know who's going to be available at the time that you pick.
We will talk plenty more about the Guardians. Paul Hoynes will join us a little bit later in the show. CBS Sports' John Gonzalez, his take on the LeBron James situation with the Lakers, as well as the Cavs.
The conversation about buying out LeBron doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, just because if you're the Lakers, you were the 3 seed last year. You've got Luka and LeBron. Yes, LeBron wanted another contract, likely a 1-and-1, and you rightly and smartly decided not to give it to him. But he's still on your team. He opted into his contract. They have designs, even in a loaded Western Conference, where I think they're not as good as Oklahoma City, the Rockets, and the Nuggets. They still have designs on doing something in the postseason. So I have a hard time believing that they're just going to move on from him rather than keeping him around to try to make a run. And the reason why I don't think that they'd trade him either is because that $52.6 million is going to be awfully hard to match up salaries, which is why what would they want back from Cleveland?
And the only one that would work would be Donovan Mitchell. That's not going to happen. So we're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report is up first. We're talking Browns on Sports4CLE.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Let's head right to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, it's Daryl from Dixon. I wanted to address Andrew Berry. I know a lot of people are throwing shade at the guy and saying he's not a good GM, but, he did lose 3 first-round draft picks and 2 second-round draft picks. That's probably 5 potential starters that would be on this team right now had we not done the Deshaun Watson trade. Nobody imagined that Deshaun Watson would turn into what he has turned into. I mean, he came to us and he immediately became an incompetent quarterback. I don't blame the people there in-house. I don't know if it was the stress of the off-field situation he brought on himself. I don't know if it's maybe the system he refuses to learn Stefanski's system, won't play in it, and needed this to happen. Who knows, maybe gets himself back on track afterwards. But I don't blame Andrew Berry for this. I think he's fielded a competitive team every year, with the exception of us having a decent quarterback, which we've been spending 3 years trying to figure out if Deshaun Watson was one. I can't hold him accountable for that. I think he's done great otherwise.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Pete, it's a really polarizing view of Andrew Berry. There are a lot of people that think he's done horrible. Obviously, the trade for Deshaun Watson was awful. And then Jedrick Wills, you point to that, and Tristan Wirfs, taken a couple picks later, has been an all-pro, same position.
Yeah, I can't give Andrew Berry a pass for Deshaun Watson, and I like Andrew Berry, but he and Kevin Stefanski are fully involved in the acquisition of Deshaun Watson. Kevin Stefanski famously went down to Houston to sort of sell Deshaun Watson on coming to Cleveland. I mean, they were fully invested. Now, despite that, I think Andrew Berry has largely been average in the draft, average in free agency, and if you ignore the Deshaun Watson thing, which is a really difficult exercise to do, I think he's largely been a net benefit with trades. And then he's done some other things like undrafted free agency where I think he's been beneficial. I think people in general are too hard on Andrew Berry in certain areas, but his, career epitaph, the first paragraph, if he doesn't turn this thing around and get a Super Bowl, is going to be Deshaun Watson. And he has to own that. And that's just sort of how it goes.
Yeah, regardless of was it the owner, was it as the GM, that's attached to you because that's what you have final say in. Allegedly, is the trades. Let's turn our attention. Another thing, Quinshon Judkins, longtime Browns beat reporter, Tony Grossi on what the Quinshon Judkins incident, which he was charged with domestic violence, what it says about Andrew Berry.
let's take each case separately. Delpit has not been a problem at all since, those allegations at LSU. Some of them have gone by the wayside, like Perrion Winfrey. We know the Watson thing. It doesn't speak well to Barry's research into this. Sometimes there's no evidence of any wrongdoing in their history. And I don't know what Judkins' history was. I know in Michael Hall's case, people have told me long after the fact that there were rumblings of problems with him. So that was a risk. Of course, he was a third-round pick or second-round pick. So, yeah, it doesn't speak well to Barry's research into these guys.
So we'll get into that in a minute about Barry and Hall and Perrion Winfrey. But what's at stake for Quinshon Judkins with the Browns? I know you wrote an article about this. Domestic violence, hasn't signed his contract, wanted more guaranteed money like all the second-round picks. What's on the line for Judkins here?
Well, there's a couple of things there. Let's start with what Tony Grossi sort of brought up. Whether or not Andrew Barry is sort of failed or whatever with the background, or maybe he got it exactly right with Quinshon Judkins and this came out of nowhere. At the end of the day, the bill's going to come due. If he's not on the field and they lose games, he's ultimately going to be held responsible, as is Kevin Stefanski. Specifically with Judkins and this whole thing, obviously the first thing is Judkins was somebody who was taking on the challenge of replacing Nick Chubb with a smile on his face. Very likable, very charismatic. He was leaning into this thing. And let's be clear, the Browns were leaning into this as well. They were more than happy to sort of allow Judkins to sort of be this guy that was going to sort of help them to sort of usher in this new era and help them he was the new puppy to Nick Chubb being the old dog that was sort of being put out. And to now have this thing, it's shoved right back in your face that now you don't have the player that everybody loved in Nick Chubb, that everybody wanted to root for, or that people are still unhappy that they can't root for him. Except now, if the charges prove to be true and the NFL suspends him, now you also don't have the new player. So you end up with neither. From a larger standpoint, you look at the way the Browns drafted. They start with defense up the middle. They get a couple running backs, and ultimately they finish up with some quarterbacks in the tight end. This was a team that's sort of building to running the football, playing good defense, trying to avoid turnovers and those type of elements. And then the guy who is going to be a huge part of the offense is now at stake for potentially games at the beginning of the season. And if you're looking at the schedule and you're sitting there going, the Bengals week 1, and you're going, oh man, their first round pick, that situation's a mess. Trey Hendrickson's a mess. They've got a whole bunch of other guys who missed minicamp. You're sitting there going, okay, I can talk myself into maybe the Browns can go and beat the Bengals. Well, now you lose the guy that was sort of going to help you get there. And now you're already in a position where the rest of that 4-game stretch is incredibly difficult. So if the Browns don't get off to a strong start, and then Quinshon Judkins is coming back, game 5, game 7, whatever it is, there's a real possibility that the season's already sort of on to the next phase of now we're picking up the pieces. So there's that, and then obviously the financial element. We'll see how much hardball the Browns want to play with Quinshon Judkins as agent. That if this goes as it could, it could extend the negotiation period for how long they want to do this. And there may be arguments over guaranteed money, which could then, even if he's suspended, he'll be there for training camp. He'd be there for the preseason. But then, are you going to dig your heels in on this thing and then miss part of training camp and put yourself even further behind? So it's just a catastrophe on all these various fronts.
And I get the whole second chances thing, Winfrey and Hall, but man, at some point in time, it's got to be enough of this. We're not going to do that because we have to deal with this every training camp now.
Not only that, but one of the sales pitches to this class was the character class. They weren't going to mess around with that stuff with this class. And Quinshon Judkins was a guy who was highlighted as having excellent football character. And, last year's class at least made it to training camp. We didn't even get there with this group, which was supposed to be this different facing thing. They picked a bunch of players that not a single one of them had a legal entanglement before they got to the NFL. There was no rumblings of off-field issues other than like maybe some immaturity but nothing to this degree. So like you were trying to sell us this whole new thing, and then look, we're trying to turn the page from Deshaun Watson and say, hey, there's this whole new thing to be excited about. And then you're sitting there with fans who are sitting there legitimately excited about these rookies. Again, I cannot state this enough. They're, as a group, very photogenic, very likable, very charismatic. They get it on how to, play on camera and do these other things. And they're talented. And there are people who are like, I really like this group. And then we can't even get to training camp before there's reason for them to sort of go, why am I bothering with this?
All right, before we go to break, Jerry Jeudy, coming off a career year last year for the Browns. First time in his career lands in the NFL's top 100, voted on by the players themselves.
When you think about Jerry Jeudy's iconic season, you look at all the years, like, why hasn't this just shown up this year? It's like, well, this is one of the first years where he got the ball as early and often as we used to say all the time, like, hey, Jeudy, it's early and often.
Jerry Jeudy inside the Saints 10, takes it all the way, 89 yards.
Last season marked many milestones for Jerry Jeudy. In his first year as a Cleveland Brown, he set career highs in receptions and receiving yards. Oh, and now he makes his debut on the top 100.
The chemistry between those two, Judy's numbers have popped.
His ability to stop on a dime and come back to the football and make guys miss was so impressive.
Jeudy, everything just explosive about him.
He's got Jerry Jeudy, and Jeudy explodes along the sideline.
He make all these sharp cuts and cut on a dime and make people miss and juke guys left and right.
Jeudy, he's so slippery, makes a nice cut.
He's one of the ones, like, when you're out there guarding him, you kind of have to just have great eye discipline, have great patience, because you never know what he can do.
And he's got him for the touchdown.
Pete, obviously, they need Jerry Jeudy to have another year like that. And that's one of the reasons that I think it's Joe Flacco, because it was his production popped with Jameis Winston. You heard Winston talk about him. And I think there's a similarity in the arm talent between Winston and Flacco that Jeudy needs, quite honestly.
Well, the thing with Flacco and Winston is they will give their guys chances. And that's exactly what Jerry Jeudy wants. Just give him a chance to make plays. And I got to tell you, going back and watching after the season, I thought Jerry Jeudy was even better than I initially believed. Just an outstanding season. Now, it's 1 year. It doesn't guarantee him anything, but he was just really impressive. And I'm hoping that with another year with Kevin Stefanski and the offensive coaches that he's had, and hopefully, the quarterback question is going to be huge, but if they can run the ball better, and obviously that's now up in the air, that's going to open up more opportunities for Jeudy to be a more dynamic player. If David Njoku can stay healthy, if people can please stay away from his ankles, that's another element that can help him out. Cedric Tillman misses so much time last year. That can help him out. So, I mean, there's all these different things where you look at Jerry Jeudy and what he was able to do and how little help he had at times, that if he can just get a little bit more, there's just more there for him to do.
Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll stay on the offensive side of the ball, talk a little bit about quarterbacks. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Pete Smith from the Orange and Brown Report, the Athletic Browns beat reporter Zach Jackson, talking about the Browns quarterback competition.
This is strange because they clearly liked Dylan Gabriel. They said that by their words and their actions, and then they undercut him by drafting another quarterback. I don't know how long you can have a real 4-person competition and also get ready for a season. You know, I don't know how long you can give Joe Flacco reps off because he's just played so much more than the other guys, but also think that he's going to be your starter. Like we have to see how this thing goes. And, you know, I don't know, Anthony, we'll have to see how the crowds go and how everything goes with all of that. But the thing for Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders is they need to be really good early in camp on and off the field because they have to earn reps with better players because either one of them out there with XFL guys and undrafted rookies is going to have a real hard time, you know, when people are watching. So it's going to be a wild few weeks because the only open practices are the first 2 weeks. Then they have those joint practices in very different situations. And by the time those are gone, like we're to the end of the preseason, right? So this is like a situation that really doesn't have much precedent.
Pete, a couple of things. I agree that both Sanders and Gabriel have to earn reps. I don't think you simply say, well, we got to find out what we have. They're going to know what they have by what they see in practice. But at what point, my question is, at what point do you transition potentially from, you know, Flacco, Pickett to the younger guys?
Well, the best case scenario is exactly what you laid out. One of them is so good that you have to put them on the field. But to your question and the other situation is the record. You know, the second the playoffs are out of the question and this thing, it becomes clear that we're wasting time with Joe Flacco and those reps. Now you can start looking to those other guys. And I would still include Kenny Pickett with the 2 rookies just because he's on the last year of his contract. He's still, 24, 25. There's a world where they could see him as a bridge. Now, if it's close, you're going to go with the rookies because they're under contract and under control longer, and there's just more there. But I think the Browns have to sort of bunch those 3 younger guys up as a collective. Realistically, the competition starts out as sort of the veterans versus the rookies. But I think if I sort of agree with where you're going, which is Flacco, then it becomes Flacco versus the other 3.
So let's turn our attention to the defense. When I look at this defense on paper, if they're not a top 10, top 5 defense, I'm disappointed in them. What do you see when you look at that defense?
I think this is the most Jim Schwartz-like defense. I think he's finally getting to where he wants to be with this group. I think Dalvin Tomlinson was a fantastic football player. I don't think he was a tremendous fit for what Jim Schwartz wanted from that position. So they transitioned from him, good player. Now they bring in Mason Graham, who's more of an upfield guy who can play that nose, can play the 3. They bring in a guy like Malik Collins, who I think is going to be a huge get for the Browns. Had 45 pressures on a 49ers team that was second on the team. The Browns need that kind of impact. They've got Mike Hall. All these guys who get up the field. I think Juwan Briggs really played well down the stretch, and again is more of a fit for what this defense is. Faster, able to get more pressure from more points, which is what Jim Schwartz wants. They're a little bit more athletic, and if the front works as Jim Schwartz wants, it's going to improve the life of the secondary and take some pressure off the linebackers.
One thing that they've struggled at, and last year they struggled mightily, turning the ball over. They had 4 interceptions as a team. Is that a function of really poor free safety play, or is there much more to it than that?
Well, part of it is because they're such a heavy man team. And if you're a man coverage team, you're less, at least they shouldn't be looking at the ball as much. But additionally, look, pressure breaks pipes. Ultimately, your pass rush is going to be the biggest thing that gets you to cause turnovers. Either they cause fumbles, which is great, or if you're trying to get interceptions, then hopefully they force quarterbacks into bad decisions, hurried decisions, bad reads. We get an interception more along the lines of the Ronnie Hickman interception against the Jets, where there's pressure, the quarterback completely misses the read, Ronnie Hickman's underneath, intercepts it, returns it for a touchdown. I think those are more indicative of what this defense wants to be. Just being so relentless in terms of how much they put on the quarterback that now the quarterback's making bad decisions, and those are the types of interceptions you get, as opposed to necessarily Ed Reed type interceptions. They just don't have those guys, although Grant Delpit is very good. Again, another player they use quite a bit in man coverage because he's often used to take away tight ends.
All right. I know you wrote an article, Brown's best player under 25. Take us through that article and who it was and how you arrived there.
So we're in, heavy enlist season. So, one of the things that comes out this type of year is the best players under 25. And most places didn't mention the Browns, other than Check the Might sort of mentioned Mason Graham as a possibility for the future. And to me, the guy who I think has a case to be made, it's not the end of the world that he's not on it, is Isaiah McGuire, who's, was in his second year this past year, was, if you were going to pick the biggest success of last year, Isaiah McGuire easily was that player. And some people will look at it and go, well, he only had 1.5 sacks. He was PFF's third rated defensive end in run defense. He was ahead of TJ Watt in that area. And then you get into the metrics of pass rush win rate and those type of things. And his base win rate was 11.8%, which isn't terrific. But then you get into the true pass sets. And there he was 24%, which is exactly what you want. And if he can keep that up and hopefully take another step forward, he's got a chance to be a breakout superstar. Now, there are other players, and this is sort of one, you go back to the Deshaun Watson thing and sort of, you again wring your hands and go, well, we could have had these 3 first-round picks and maybe we have more guys on the list. But DeJuan Jones has a chance to be on that list if he plays well because he's very talented. He's just got to stay healthy. And then you have guys like Cedric Tillman who flashed, obviously hasn't shown near enough. And then the guy that if we did this list last year, everybody would have put Mark Emerson as one of the guys, and certainly the guy for the Browns had a dominant season, and then he goes into training camp and has the joint practice where he shuts down Justin Jefferson. Everybody thinks he's going to be the greatest player in the world, seemingly including Martin Emerson. And then it's sort of whether he takes his foot off the gas or whatever it is, he thinks he's made it. It just doesn't translate that well. And some of that is a product of the fact that their pass rush wasn't as consistent as it has been, but also little mistakes lead to big mistakes. A small physical mistake, a small mental mistake, those things. When you are a guy like Martin Emerson, you're playing a volatile position like corner. I'll use Sauce Gardner as an example. His first couple of years in the league, he's the best in the business. Even he last year was dramatically worse from the year before. That position is incredibly difficult. But if Martin Emerson can bounce back, one, we're going to be talking about him in terms of a contract extension, and two, he won't be on this list anymore because he's too old. But that would certainly solidify one of the more important positions on the team.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Think about this: if all 3 of those guys have years like they're capable of, McGuire and Jones and Emerson, all of a sudden we're talking about, what a great job Andrew Berry is doing finding 3rd and 4th round talent. But it goes year to year, and there's a fluctuation until you get into the 3rd year.
Yeah, and some of that is the nature of the beast. I mean, if you're asking me to bet on one of those guys, Isaiah McGuire is easily the one I'd bet on. I just think, even coming out of college, I thought it was a crime that he lasted until the 4th round. Just the combination of youth, athleticism, production in the SEC. I think he has a chance. I was stunned last year. Jacques Zaire in June. They're asking who had potential to be a 10-sack guy on outside of Myles Garrett on a team with Zadarius Smith and Alex Wright and Obo Okoronkwo. The first name out of his mouth was Isaiah McGuire, who at that point was the 5th end on the depth chart. Now, obviously, Alex Wright was injured and Zadarius Smith was ultimately traded. But, I don't think anyone would question that Isaiah McGuire has sort of earned his spot as the number 2 player last year and has every reason to believe he's going to be the starter this year with a strong camp.
Pete Smith, Orange and Brown Report, as always. Great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Pete.
Thanks for having me.
Pete Smith, make sure you check him out. Really insightful stuff. Orange and Brown Reports, they do a great job with the Browns. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, up next. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. Ohio, light a put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Don't we need to see what we got in Sanders and Gabriel? Because you might have your franchise quarterback right there, and I think it's Sanders. And then you could do other things with them 2 first-rounders next year. We need to give this kid a chance. He's been groomed his whole life for this. All right, I love you, brother. Be good, be safe, you and the family, and I'll be in touch soon, Dave.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, they're going to know what they have in these rookies. They see them every day. They see them in the classroom. The last part of it will be seeing them on the field. But unless one of these guys plays Jaden Daniels type, if they have an early pick, they're going to take a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, if you've been watching the Browns like I have, how many quarterbacks do they go through every year? I mean, last year, 4 different starters. The year before, 5 different starters. Now, you don't wish that to happen, but just the way things go with the Browns is that there's a very good chance that just the natural progression with injuries that you're going to see these guys get an opportunity. And I know that the fans seem to want to clamor for Sanders particularly. I could see that if he was taken 2nd overall, because that means that is who they drafted to be the franchise quarterback. When you draft Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round, you're hoping that he does develop into that. Or the 5th round with Shedeur Sanders, kind of the same thing. But you're not planning on them immediately stepping in and being the starter. If I'm not mistaken, Daniels was the 2nd overall pick. That's a different situation. So with that being said, the Browns have a very tough start to the season. They play 3 NFC North teams, all went to the playoffs last year, and they have the 3 division games. So those first 6 games are a gauntlet. Their season could very well be over, going into the 7th game. If you're 1-5 or even not 2-4, I guess you could still be in it, but you're going to then probably turn to the rest of the rookies for the second half of the season. But if you're selling to the locker room, you're going to play the best quarterback. And I would say right now it would be one of the veterans, especially going against teams. 5 of the 6 teams I think were playoff teams last year. So you don't want to throw a rookie out there, just throw him out there. I think if you're patient, you're going to be able to see them on the field in natural progression. Now, the other thing is every day they get to see them in practice. They're going to get a good look at them in training camp, and they're going to get a good look at them in preseason. If head and shoulders, somebody is so much better, and I'm talking rookie or I'm talking Pickett or whoever, they're going to play to start the season. You have a long season, and you can, let it take its course. I think the Browns will have a good idea, what they have just watching them every day in practice going up against their own defense. And then, when you look at those preseason, not so much the preseason games, but those practices with the Carolina Panthers and the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, you're going to be able to really get a good evaluation, I think, of what you have, especially in the rookies. But I do think they will play in the regular season at some point.
The other thing I would say is Kenny Pickett probably won't be back unless they identify him as a starter. Final year of his contract. Joe Flacco will be 42. So these guys are the guys that they're going to be developing. And then the question is there a franchise guy they like early in the draft that they go and get? I know you've written an article. What does Mason Graham need to do to kind of live up to the draft status that the Browns had with him?
I just think he was identified, as somebody that can really help, up front in their interior pass rush and take pressure off to free things up for Myles Garrett and the other guys. They had very little pass rush from the inside. I think their leader had 3 sacks last year at defensive tackle. and they're counting on Michael Hall, Malik Collins, and Mason Graham doing that. I also think if you watched Ohio State play Michigan the last 2 years, the Browns to their or the Buckeyes to their detriment tried to run the ball up the middle, which was the strength of the Michigan defense, and Mason Graham had a big part in shutting down the Buckeyes running game, and that's Judkins and Henderson, and I think they're hoping he can help get that rushing defense back in a position where they are back to top 10 defense. I mean, last year their rushing defense was 21st in the NFL. And if you can stop the run, provide some inside pass rush, I think that'll go a long way in helping this defense get back to where they want to be.
Let's talk a little bit about the cornerbacks. You think it's make or break year for both Emerson and Greg Newsome, both final year of their contract? I know, I know you wrote an article about it. Take us through kind of your thoughts there.
Well, I just think that, both of them had subpar seasons. I think for sure Newsome, they gave him $13 million guaranteed in the fifth-year option. And I don't know if they're willing to let him walk in free agency right now, just like they did Jedrick Wills, but it very well could be. But this is a chance for him to establish himself that he is one of the best three cornerbacks. And I think they have the same situation with Emerson because he wasn't a first-round pick. He had a 4-year contract. So this is where, they decide if they're going to extend him or not. So you really don't want to turn over two of your top three corners. So I do think it's a big year for them, for the Browns to make a decision if they're going to bring both of them back or only one of them back. And otherwise, you're going to have to probably use one of your first-round picks on a cornerback next year. If not a first-round pick, a high pick, because you need somebody to be in there. I think the wild card is what did they have in Cameron Mitchell or even Miles Harden. Both were draft picks. Harden was sidelined most last year. He was only a 7th-round pick, so you don't know what his ceiling is. But more so Mitchell. He played, but you really didn't see him, break out or do anything outstanding. So can Harden, Mitchell, or somebody else they have on the roster replace Emerson, Newsome, or both? Or do you have to look at free agency or draft to address that? That's why I think it's a big year, because I think they have to make a decision on one or both of those guys.
Let's talk a little bit about Carson Schlesinger before we go to break. What do you think the Browns expect from him? What do they need from him to be an elite defense?
Yeah, I mean, we all know the offense was so challenged last year, and that was one of the biggest reasons they were 3-14, only scoring 15 points a game. And yet, we talked about it on this show. The Browns identified that the quickest way to be relevant is to get that defense back to where it was when they were number one in 2023. Now, they don't have to be the number one, but if they can get in the top 10 or even in the top 5, they can play meaningful games in the second half of the season, because that'll allow you to be competitive all season. And I do think that they feel up the middle with Graham and Schlesinger that those two can immediately step in and play. Obviously, you lose JOK for the season. I don't think Schlesinger's exactly that type of a player, but I think he will do some of the things that JOK did. I do think that they're hoping he can be on the field immediately, along with Jordan Hicks. And when they're playing two linebacker sets, he's one of the two. I saw him in the off-season program. He reminded me of a young Clay Matthews, probably more so the way he looked. We didn't see him hit, but he looked like a sideline-to-sideline player, not as fast as JOK, but if he can acclimate to the NFL game quick, I think he can be, a big asset for the defense. Because think about this, they had the first pick in the second round, and the last 3 drafts, that pick had been traded because 31 other teams identify a player they really want and they go up and trade for it. The Browns rebuffed any opportunity to trade that pick because they went in and honed in on getting Schlesinger. So they liked him a lot, and so I think that he's going to have an immediate impact. It's tough for a rookie to make a major impact, but I do think that he's going to be given the opportunity to do so. I think that Graham and Schlesinger on defense are who they identified could really help them get back over the top on the defensive side.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Here we go with Andrew Berry. Why is it every guy he drafts, they either stink or they get arrested? So another draft is come and gone. You got 4 quarterbacks. You got rid of a good running back. You got this one. Now he ain't going to play. You know, I wonder if there's background checks other teams do on these guys. But every guy he picks, rather than just look in a book and go by stats, why doesn't he interview these people and talk to them and get a sense of if they're smart enough to not get arrested? But you think about it, guys, go back with our draft picks and remember how many got arrested and how many didn't play and how many stink. Put you behind every year. Sooner or later, we might get it right, but I doubt it. Take care.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Fred, those are the things that you're going to have to deal with when you've had what the Browns have had. They've had a draft pick the last 3 seasons, and now Judkins is the one that didn't have any red flags reportedly by anybody. Hall did, Winfrey did. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was Perrion Winfrey. But I can't say much because history says what he's saying has some validity to it.
Yeah, it does. And I just put a story out this afternoon about that. The Browns, unfortunately, were planning on Quinshon Judkins to kind of ease the pain of losing Nick Chubb. But now we don't know how this is going to turn out, but very easily, it can make people miss Nick Chubb all the more because I don't think Chubb is a guy that would have put himself in that position. Now, pushing back a little bit, any research I did, I saw no red flags. Obviously, I don't have the background material that the teams do, but most scouting services, put that in there. There were character issues with Michael Hall and Winfrey and some of those. I don't know where this came from. I mean, I was a proponent saying I felt like the Browns should get one of those running backs from Ohio State. I preferred Travion Henderson, but I was happy they got Judkins. I can't really fault the Browns. I don't know how you know that a 21-year-old is going to do what he did. It's very unfortunate, and they were counting on him big time, and I just feel like this, you saw what it did with Hall. Hall got suspended 5 games. His rookie season was basically derailed. He came back. You're playing catch up. He got hurt, and then he had a season-ending injury. I don't know if that'll be, but those first 6 games are tough. That's when you would need a strong running game. And if Judkins misses most of that time, that's going to put you right in, in a tough situation to get acclimated. Again, you're in the middle of the season if you're coming off a suspension, if that's what happens. But it is, I don't know if you can predict these type of things happening. Same way with the speeding tickets with Sanders. It's unfortunate. It's not just the Browns. You see these around the NFL. It's kind of unfortunately a sign of our times, but we'll see what happens here. But I do think that uh, that you have to try any way you can to do all the due diligence, and I think they do. I mean, I can only talk to somebody so often and do so much check. It comes down a little bit to their accountability. And when somebody's 20, 21, 22, getting millions and millions of dollars for the first time, uh, who knows, how they're going to behave and act.
Yeah, and NFL teams do have heads of security that are usually former FBI types that do the research into this. So it's not like they do the research. Sometimes you can't find the answers.
You're investing millions of dollars into these guys. You want to do as much research, and that's why you hear taking a player off the board. So,
Right.
In fairness to Browns, I can't say that they didn't do any research on Judkins. How do you know something that happens like that when there's no history or any signs that that was going to happen?
All right, let's talk a little bit about training camp. Rookies report in a couple of days. What are some things that would be good signs early? What are some things that would concern you early? So take us through kind of what to listen out for early in camp.
Well, obviously the quarterbacks, you're going to look and see, if they changed any of their order and so forth. But I think more so that's going to play itself out. I think you take a look at the wide receiver room. Is Deontay Johnson looking like he can be a player that can fit in with Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy? And how about Harold Fannin at tight end? Could he be looked at as an extra wide receiver? Will he be a factor, and how will he be brought up to speed quick? You got DeJuan Jones out at left tackle. Is he going to be able to hold that job, or will the 12-year veteran Cornelius Lucas, step in and be the left tackle? And then on defense, we talked about Mason Graham, Schlesinger. A lot of these guys, how quick are they acclimated? Going back to the offense, will Judkins, kind of in limbo. I think the eyes turn to Dylan Sampson. Now you feel like, okay, here was the SEC Offensive Player of the Year that they got in the 4th round. Maybe he's going to have the opportunity to become the bell cow back if Judkins, is suspended. So there's a lot of storylines. The Browns, most of their starting positions, I would say, are pretty much set. It's the depth positions that you look and you say, I don't know how deep they are at this position. Safety, there's questions, with Ronnie Hickman. Is he going to be able to hold on, be the starter? And, when you look around both sides of the ball, those are some of the positions and the players that I'm going to be looking at.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Always fun, Dave. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Always good and insightful Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We turn our attention to the Guardians on Sports4CLE. All-Star game is tonight. After a couple days off, it'll be Slade Ciccone with the start Friday when the Guardians return to action at home against the Athletics. Some chance for them to make up some ground as you look at who they face coming out of the All-Star break. 3 with the Athletics, 4 with the Royals, 4 with the Orioles, 3 with the Those are among the teams that are at the bottom of the standings in all of baseball. Let's welcome in Paul Hoynes, Guardians beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Hoynesy, they're 4.5 out of that third spot, but it is a favorable schedule second half.
Yeah, definitely, David. They really had they played more teams with a 500 or plus record in the first half than anybody else. Now the schedule kind of lessens. They are, in terms of strength of schedule, playing teams, with below 500 records, or they have the best record in that regard. So we'll have to see if they can take advantage of that. No matter who you play, though, David, you got to beat them. So, and they haven't done. They've played a little better in this past road trip. What, 6-1 after losing 10 straight, but that 10-game losing streak really kind of that set them back for sure.
Yeah, and trade deadline is the 31st, so coming out of the gate, they got to eat into that 4.5 game deficit to avoid a potential sell-off. I'm curious. Hey, Hoynesy, from the print piece, what do you think of the Josh Naylor for Slade Ciccone trade?
It's kind of one of those trades where it's helped both teams, really. Ciccone has been a revelation to me. 4-4. He just what's coming off a start, 7 scoreless against Houston. I know the Astros are banged up a little bit, but that's still a really good team. That's the first division team. They're leading the AL West, and he did a great job against them. And that wasn't a fluke. I mean, we've seen 10 solid starts from him. And as far as Naylor goes, the Guardians definitely miss him. They miss his bat. He had the good first half last season. They really haven't had anybody replace those numbers. And Josh is doing basically the same thing for Arizona through the All-Star break. Just having he's hitting 294, 11 home runs, 58 RBIs, 8.17 ERA. Last year at the break for Cleveland, the batting average was lower, 246, but more homers at 22, 70 RBIs, and an 8.816 OPS. So he's right there.
Yeah. So today, news coming out earlier, Paul Sewald back on the 15-day IL shoulder strain. That's obviously not great news.
No, I mean, I feel bad for Sewald. He makes the opening day roster, makes 14 appearances through April, then goes on the IL with an injury that really no one really knew what was wrong with him. The Guardians have had a lot of experience with pitching injuries, but Lonnie Soloff, their head medical guy, had never seen an injury like this. Dr. Keith Meister, who's done all the surgeries for the Guardians, most of the surgeries, I should say, had never seen it. Some kind of lat strain, and I'm just wondering if that's the same injury that's put him back on the IL. This is a guy that has saves in his closing experience. They brought him in because they could take some of the burden off Class A, but that hasn't worked out.
So I know you wrote an article about Guardians' top 2 relievers. That as we get closer to the trade deadline, relievers all the contenders need them. What are the Guardians telling teams about their relief pitching?
Well, this is coming from a couple different sources, not outside of the Guardians. Coming from a couple different teams that these teams, both contenders, have been told that the Guardians will not trade Emmanuel Clase or Cade Smith, that they're going to hold on to those guys. It's understandable. They're both on, great contracts, club-friendly contracts. Clase has one more guaranteed year in 2026, then 2 club options worth $10 million each. And if he keeps pitching like he's pitched, he's come back here after a slow start. He's a bargain. And the same can be said with Cade Smith, who has, what, 1 year of service time. So they still have 5 years of control over this guy. And, they're not even paying him they're just paying him above the major league minimum. So, those are two tough guys to trade with, especially if you feel you have a chance to still make a run at a wild card berth.
And the starting pitching has been really good. It's the offense that's kind of let people down here the last several weeks. Shane Bieber, I know again you wrote an article, had to pause that. How is he doing now, returning from that Tommy John surgery?
He's had, since Thursday, David. Last Thursday, he's thrown 2 bullpens. Thursday he threw 41 pitches, 3 innings at Progressive Field. Then on Sunday he threw again, and tonight he's out in Goodyear, Arizona. He's scheduled to throw 2 or 3 more innings, and then if all goes well, I would think we'd see him joining an affiliate in Ohio, maybe Akron, maybe Columbus, sometime next week, and hopefully he progresses. And if all goes well, I would think you could see him back in the Cleveland's rotation at late August, early September.
Yeah, and again, that would be a huge lift without question. All right, MLB draft finished up yesterday. Guardian, some interesting selections top of the draft. Let's take a look at a couple of them. First pick in the first round, it's 27th pick overall. They take Jace Lavalette. Had a down year as a junior that lowered his draft stock. Going into that, he was potentially one of the top picks in the draft. Has as much raw power as anybody in the draft class. 6'6", 230, left-handed hitter. Power grades out by scouts, MLB.com, 65 out of 80, which is really good. Second round, they draft a 6'3", 218-pound shortstop out of Tennessee, Dean Curley. MLB scouting report. Solid to plus raw power that comes naturally. Understanding of the strike zone allows him to work gap to gap. Has gotten overly selective at the plate the last season. Might have lowered his draft stock a little. He was in the second round. Third round, they select Aaron Walton, outfielder out of Arizona. Profiles as a big, strong right-handed hitter, 6'3", 219, built like Mike Trout is what they say. Is viewed as power over pure bat. Did make adjustments during his college season to try to cut down on the strikeouts. Those are the top 3 picks, Hoynes. I know you kind of wrote an article talking about they went to college when it comes there. These are guys that don't usually take as long to develop. The other thing is, it seems like they're looking for some power, thankfully.
Yeah, David, I'm sorry. I do this podcast with Joe Noga every day. Definitely a change in philosophy. I don't know if it was, the draft changing from 2 to 3 days that, kind of made them, if this caused this. Or obviously you're drafting 27th, so it's a lot different than having the first round pick, the first pick in the draft like they had last year. But definitely, this is I think a welcome change. There wasn't, they of course they had to draft 1 shortstop, they had to draft 1 middle infielder, but this guy looks like Cal Ripken. He's a big shortstop, so this is. Definitely a change in philosophy. I think they need power. We've seen that over the last 2 years, where the last couple, maybe 2 or 3 years, where they get into the postseason and power plays, and really they don't have an answer to the opposition they face. So I'm really anxious to see these guys, see how they progress, and like you said, they're college kids. They're on a faster track than a high school player. You could conceivably see these guys at, 3 years, after 2-3 years, trying to get to the big leagues.
All right, before I let you go, trade deadline 31st, so a couple of weeks. Do you think, is there a move out there that Chris Antonetti makes? At some point they have to determine, are you going to try to trade guys like Lane Thomas if he's healthy, Carlos Santana? Is there a move that they can make to get help offensively?
I think there's a move out there. You know, the question is, are they in or out? You know, that's the question. And you know, even with this streak right before the All-Star break of good baseball, they really there's no. I don't think there's been any great revelation about this team. We still don't know what it is. I mean, even if it's a 500 team, that's probably not going to be good enough to get into the postseason. So, I would think they would be more sellers, prone to selling than buying right now.
Yeah, I couldn't argue that at all. Let's see. The next couple of weeks are going to be important as they get up to that deadline to see how far out they are. Hoynes, as always, great stuff. Appreciate you making some time for us. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, David.
Paul Hoynes, make sure you check him out. He is the Guardians beat reporter from cleveland.com. Always best Guardians coverage in town. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.